So good morning, in truth, afternoon, everybody. I'm hiding water in my mug, but I'm really excited today. So today's kind of a different conversation. This is a personal conversation that I'm going to have with a friend that I really just wanted to share with all of you. And so today is Purvi Lippincott, and she's amazing. And I've known her for a very, very long time. I mean, since I've migrated to Indy. We met and we had to talk about it before when I was at the IMA. This will always be forever in your hearts, the IMA. And I was very lucky to be able to bring a yoga program to the galleries. And Purvi was with Lululemon, and we started a love affair there. So she is a teacher of yoga, a true practitioner. She has changed my practice forever. She's with Practice Indy. So she's also a mom of two. She's an activist. She's a first generation immigrant. It's Asian American Heritage Month. Like, let's have a great conversation. So I'm so excited. So Purvi, thanks for having coffee with me.
Hey, yeah, I've got water in my cup too,
I mean, we're trying to be on brand.
Yeah, here we are, but we got them. Mm-hmm.
So you do a lot, right? And you're incredibly busy and you give a lot back to community in different ways. So whether that is activism or in a more holistic, right, with your practice and with your teachings as well. What do you do? What would you say that is?
I would like to say, yes, I'm a yoga teacher,
Mhm.
and but I'm always a yoga student, and that is how I kind of like to do everything. I had a teacher once say, "How you do anything is how you do everything," and that really resonated true for me. And yoga, this idea that we move the body, yes, like that's what we see on the social medias and on the images around all the stuff being imprinted subliminally upon us, but also it's so many other things. There's so many pieces to it, and it it's how I make a living, but it's also how I raise my family and engage in my community and trying to engage in the world around us, right? So it's I do the yoga.
The yoga.
I do the yoga, and from how I parent my children to how I
Yeah.
show up as a partner and as a friend and as a neighbor, and
I would actually love to hear because you are in a space that is grounded, right? Grounded in a way that is almost taken over by white women, right? And so I I'm just curious, how you navigate and not to take this whole conversation, we could have a whole conversation just about this topic and not to go off the rails, but how is that, in Indianapolis, working in a field that is so true to you, but also very white womanish?
yeah, well, it's interesting because, to be fair, right, my parents are first generation
Yeah.
immigrants. I was born in Chicago, was raised in India for a little bit. I came back. We moved to middle of nowhere, Michigan. So then I was surrounded by a bunch of white folks, right?
Yeah.
And so that's been a pretty standard arena for me, or a space
Yeah.
in which I'm a minority. I almost you know have often been one of the few Asian minorities in the communities that I'm in. Even in college, I had one Asian friend, right?
Yeah.
So, and she was adopted, so from South Korea. But we have all of these dynamics. I found myself in communities where I consistently teach, where it's more than the poses, right? It's more than
Yeah.
a teacher on a pedestal.
Right.
It's an incorporation of community and philosophy. And so between Practice Indy, where we have a weekly theme and a pose, where we're not just saying let's show up and burn some calories together,
Mhm.
because that is really something we need, especially here in Indiana, right? We are one of the highest ranked when it comes to the worst heart care or
Yep.
heart disease and ailments and health, all of that stuff. And then also it comes back to like, why was yoga created? What is it about? And we're incorporating that regularly in the classes, and
Yeah.
not just my class, but every teacher is showing up that way. And the same thing happens at the yoga studio. I guest teach some of their teacher trainings, and I come in for philosophies, and but you hear it, they are following more of the ideologies versus
Yeah.
like a person, I mean, I could go on about how many programs have some white man in front of him telling him like, follow me, do it this way. And it's like, okay, or maybe not. Like, maybe let's maybe bring it back to like, who's leading in this community, right? And then
Yeah.
we do see a bunch of white women, so then that's going to be who's going to be in front of you typically.
Yeah.
And increasing the diversity and inclusion in that is what we're working on right now. But
It's really
in
wonderful.
Indianapolis, it's a challenge.
It is a challenge. How did you get to want to, from college in Michigan to coming here? What pulled you into this profession, into wanting to teach? And I mean, full disclosure, you're a phenomenal teacher. I mean, I had done yoga for a decade, and all of a sudden I take 2 privates with you, and it changed my whole, like, there are just things that my body didn't do originally that was incorrect. And that is, it's just been opened all that up. So that to say, what brought you into yoga where you're like, this is where I have a calling, and this is what I want to do?
It's so funny. It was like one of those things, like the universe is always planting its seeds and you just maybe don't know it. And I grew up in a small town in Michigan, right? And my mom has, like, the notorious story is she wanted to be an attorney, but her mom wanted to be a doctor. So she went to like pre-med, did all this stuff, and then like didn't do any of it. Has like a bachelor's in science and biology. And so I was like, I'm going to be the attorney. I'm going to help the people. I'm going to be a public defender. Like, I'm watching Law and Order. I will be helpful. Growing up, I'm going to help those who need more help, right? Service is a big part of what I grew up with. And it's something we've always traditionally done. And it's part of our belief systems. And so all of that was kind of coming up for me. I went to Ball State and I did pre-law, and I did my internship at a prosecutor's office, and I came to Indianapolis and I worked for a couple of attorneys that were public defenders, and they were just so unhappy. And you could see, and I learned in college, right, as I was taking criminal justice criminology classes, that like how broken the system is, and what have we learned in 2020, right? Like, if we haven't had a chance to step back and go. So I was like, okay, maybe I won't do that, but like, maybe I'll work with policy. Then I ended up in politics. Well, that's a whole, I probably I didn't fit in where I worked in Indianapolis again. And that was it's really a challenge to change policies. What we're seeing, right? We're up against a lot of dynamics. And so I was like, what is the direct route to people? And yoga kept coming up, and people I looked to in the community were either teaching or practicing, were suggesting, and it was like rising in the buzz. And so I was like, I know this stuff. Like, I know some of this language that they use. I grew up with it around my house, and I started taking yoga classes at NIFS. Yeah. And then talked with Aaron Morgan a little bit over at Invoke, and then ended up, at the yoga studio, and started practicing in like regularly in like 2010, 2011, and just never looked back. It was like, this is what I need to do. This is how I work with people.
That's another name. That's another woman that is amazing too. Erin Morgan is a true delight as well. Big fan. Okay, so I love all that, and I love the listening to the seeds being planted over time. It's just so wonderful. So let's guide into kind of the next question, which is always the one that I book in, and we kind of talked on it before, but and it's different for everybody. That struggles versus delights, or I shouldn't say verse, that struggles and then also delights. And it's different for people, obviously, for different reasons, and COVID, sometimes not COVID. How is that coming up for you? Have there been little seeds that have been planted that are kind of coming up for fruition now? Is there something that you're struggling with? How have things been?
We had a kid in a pandemic.
Mhm.
So there was that casual experience. We've come to heads with like a political, a pendulum that's been swinging really hard, right? And um, so it's been a challenge, like to see how we're choosing to exist and what that's
Mhm.
aligning with, and who it's aligning with, and who it's maybe not aligning with. And I just, there are some things that I'm a firm believer in, and from personal experience, right? Mental health and access to that. Women's reproductive rights are very important. Um, I once heard uh, Paul, oh gosh, what's his name? His book's right here in my drawer. Paul Hawken. Paul Hawken, he's like the most brilliant scientist man. And he talked about how like one of the ways that we can change the world quickly in climate change is by providing education and reproductive rights and access to women everywhere,
Yeah.
because it sets us up for greater success. They can take care of their families if we provide them with skills and tools and access, education. These things
Say
are
it
just important,
louder.
right? Like these are very important to me. And so I struggle right now because you're hearing how many people are really still trying to like bolster those things, not recognize them. And I've needed those choices and that support in my lifetime. And it's hard because it's not peace, love, and light. It's a lot of
Yeah.
discomfort. That's what yoga is. Like, we're
Yeah.
not spiritually trying to bypass people and be like, oh, but you know, if you just think positive enough, it's like, no, it's uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable to say, like, I have a good friend that I thought I aligned with, but when it comes down to like my finite amount of time that I
Mhm.
have to spend, who am I going to spend it with? And
I will say, I mean, that really speaks to me. I mean, COVID has changed a lot of the dynamic. The people that I thought, you know, I was here with, and, whether it's politically or time or, just some of those fundamental things are not the same people, right? That I am actually close with. So it's fascinating, those that you align with and those that you don't. And I agree, I think, with the pandemic and with, just civil change and discourse is sometimes we literally just don't see the world the same, right? As other people do. And that's really fascinating to me. So where have you, and excuse me if anyone hears anything loud, there's slightly construction in my living room. Um, where have you found some of that delight though, right? Coming out that other end and finding those people that you are finding alignment with. Like where's some of that joy for you?
oh well, it gives me the hope, right? To hear people say aloud, like they're having conversations, sometimes really difficult ones with people. Um, I have like a stance on my, it is fluid, and I know people can like really be firm in some of this stuff, but like cancel culture, I don't really understand it. I'm like, take a break culture is for me, right? Like you reassess,
Pulling
like
that out
you
as your full quote.
reevaluate,
Take a break culture.
like take the break, you like figure out, if it is uncomfortable and no longer working with you, like to have this separation and dynamic no longer work. And like if there's like a desire to evolve, like, right, the change has to come from the self. You can't make people change, they have to really be willing to do the work themselves. um if you're like willing to meet me, like let's go into conversation, let's expand. But um I have trouble supporting things or ways or spending my money how I vote with my dollar, and um in ways that perpetuate either like keeping a specific demographic from having the same rights and vital like access, and opportunity that so many of us are given, right? And it's just we had a party for my son's birthday, and it was just like awesome to be like, we're vaccinated and we have a community, and it just felt so good to see people laugh and be together and like realize like maybe it was what we needed was to like fine tune and pick through and be like, we really don't need that many people around, that maybe we had once convinced ourselves because we'd known each other for so long, or there was like this history, or like we sports together, or like drank beverages during
Yes.
like binge drinking, not the same version of me person,
Yeah.
and so and it gives me hope because we are hearing them talk with their parents or their cousins
Yeah.
or their aunt and uncles or their neighbors, and it is like it is slowly shifting. It is slowly shifting.
I agree. It 100% gives me hope as well. Um, so to that, right? To that thought of shifting and hope and aligning. So how can you see or advise or dream for the community to show up?
Oh, you know, I think it's like first, like slow down, right? Like slow down. And we are perpetuated by like the red alerts on our devices, the like bing, like I have like my computer right here is like 9 emails, which I am a zero email person. I flag things and so
I would make you so uncomfortable. I have a coworker. He's like, I'm a filer, and I'm a piler. I'm like, I can just search it. It's fine.
Yeah, I like flag and organize and have folders, and it's my Virgo rising. I'm like, just that's how I show up in the world. But like slow down, and then it's get curious. Why are we doing what we're doing? And a big thing is like we're privileged in what Craig and I get to do, right? Like we one have he's has a nice enough job where he can provide us with healthcare, so I can have like a part-time gig that supports us and thrives in our community. But two, like we buy our food at the farmers market, we go to the local butcher, we try to buy as small imprint as we can, because just as much as you need your Myers and your Walmarts for our
Yeah.
demographic, what we need is to support smaller, in my opinion, because like big ag, right, and climate change, those are values that we're working on in our own household. And so it's all these areas where we're really intentionally doing it. We have to slow down and go, is this the way we're doing it? Like, it doesn't have to be this way, or could we do differently that could maybe honor our values a little bit more, right? And what are our values? And it is to help the planet thrive, to leave a better future and to help include and diversify the communities we exist in. And yeah, slow down and get curious. And sometimes when I feel like I'm digging my heels in, right, like I'm a very much like science-based evidence. I don't know how we go against that. Like, to me, it's like, yes, we agree on how facts are found, but there's some things I want to dig my heels into the ground about. And I realize that's probably when I need to like back up and invite a different perspective in, because I obviously am not getting the full picture, and I'm clinging to something, and it's probably a chance to open up and like maybe go, okay.
I do that too. I mean, and I think that is purely human. And I think you, or at least I, like you, you try to hold space for people and differences and not push things along. But I've found that my trigger is this vaccine, to where I'm like, I try very hard to be like, okay, okay. But I will say that this has been trying for me in that sense of holding space for others to be different.
yeah. Well, exactly.
It's so
right?
hard.
It's really a complicated. Oh, the vaccine thing is the one that gets me really like, I'm like, but we have all this information on it, right?
Yeah.
Which
like, is interesting too, because, and some might think from this conversation, knowing you come from, this yoga holistic background, right? Because it seems like sometimes those, right, that we like, I'm not going to, and, all those things, and it's not right, and vaccines, and it's fascinating. So I love that you're like, science, I want to get back to normal. I finally got to see some humans recently, and I was like, oh my God, I hugged my parents for the first time since Christmas. Like, science is real. Anyway, again, I feel like that's a whole other conversation that is not going to happen in this nugget. So I'm going to rein it back in.
Yes.
Okay. So last question for this is always, how are you going to leave your trace on our community? It's a biggie.
It is. It is. I think it's by example. I think I engage on social media, but I try to do it very intentionally, right? So that's my example is I'm not just trying not to just like willy-nilly exist and that the
Yep.
thing is there, right? Like I'm trying to support small as much as I can, have conversation and dialogue with that. And it's not judging the people around me for going to where they go, but maybe saying like, this is why we buy where we do and what we do. And with each one of those conversations, people can hopefully start to like slow down, ask like what they're doing and if it resonates. And um, I'd love to see, more little markets and people engaging together and small business supporting small businesses and the community. I mean, investing in female owned businesses is more likely to put money back into your community than other things, right? Like, let's use
Say it louder.
information to help people. And I think that's my thing. I'm the one that's like continually educating. I'm like studying with a studio out of New York, and I booked a trip to Greece this summer or this fall, summer fall for a retreat. And it's example, like you matter. My kids, I tell them, like I tell them, I'm like, mommy loves you so much. And he goes, mommy loves herself. And I go, yeah, mommy loves herself. Like, yes. And I want you to like, you love yourself. And he goes, I love myself. I go, that's right, Beckett. It matters. Like you should love yourself, these examples, we're imprinting it with, you have Henry, like we have our little ones and we
Yeah.
just, we show up an example and try to uplift those around us to see that they have that possible for them. So,
Oh my gosh. I love that. I think that's the most beautiful thing that we can end on today. So, Purvi, I'm so grateful for you taking some time and having coffee with me. It's so delightful.
oh, it was really my pleasure, Jillian. It was so nice to see you and catch up and, just talk about the things I'd love to talk to about people I admire and enjoy in the community like yourself. So
Oh,
thank you.
thank you.